Man, what a wild ride on the Smash Ultimate hype train it was. Starting with just 11 newcomers, with only 6 of them being brand new original fighters, Super Smash Bros. Ultimate went from having the least amount of new additions to the roster of any Smash Bros. Game to having the most at a whopping 24 new fighters, thanks in part to the Fighters Passes. And in my opinion, that's how it should be. I mean, the newcomer lineup has to live up to the game's subtitles somehow. So, with so many new characters joining the battle, of course there would be fighters among the selection that I really like to play as. And so we arrive at this list. Now, obviously, I'm counting the new Echo Fighters as newcomers. And I might as well say this now. If a fighter's core gimmick is to switch to different ones, then all of the grouped fighters will be counted as one entry in the Smash lists going forward. Gee, I wonder who made this list. Before we begin, I'd like to give a brief honorable mention. A freaking common enemy from the Super Mario series. That is absolutely stupid. I love it. Smash has had its fair share of joke characters, and while I wouldn't say this is quite on the level of Duck Hunt, it's definitely up there. But for this game specifically, it's just so funny how we have all these big names and fan requests getting in, only to have a zany, goofy, generic enemy join the battle. It's so hilariously dumb, but that's what makes it awesome. But with that out of the way, time to celebrate my 10 personal favorite newcomers that Ultimate had to offer. Let the chaos commence! This first fighter is actually a surprise unexpected addition to the list at the time of writing. I initially planned to have this character as an honorable mention, but then I decided to actually sit down and play this character more. At first, I couldn't get the hang of how they played, but once I got more use out of them, the fighter really grew on me to the point of instantly shooting up to 10th place on my list. And let's just say, for Smash Bros. As a whole, this fighter was a long time coming. I wouldn't exactly call myself a big Metroid fan. I've had interest in the series, of course, but I haven't played very many of the games. Mind you, I enjoyed what I got to experience from the series. Regardless, Ridley is a character that I'm surprised wasn't in Smash sooner. Even before I got exposed to the series, I knew of the character and how big a deal he was. Heh, big. Anyway, now that he's in Smash, it's been a real treat to play as one of Nintendo's most iconic villain characters. The concept for Ridley's playstyle is pure evil, and that's a perfect description for how he plays. He's like a wild animal. I know he's intelligent, but he can get pretty brutal. What with his biting, the claw swipes, the mini attacks with his razor-sharp tail, those wings, smearing the opponent across the stage, and of course, his classic fireball attack. And let's not forget that incredible final smash. Like I said, he was a fighter that I wasn't used to at first, but after I got the hang of him, I soon realized he can be a real terror on the battlefield. It really does feel like I'm playing as an evil, sinister, murderous villain, which is what Ridley is. Metroid was one of the series in Smash that desperately needed a new rep, and of the two that we got, who are villains mind you, Ridley was a much welcome addition to the cast. I mean, what else is there to say? It's Ridley. Smash needed more villains, and for someone who has been requested for literal decades, he was given the justice he so rightly deserved. I know Sakurai once said that it's more important for a fighter in Smash to be fun rather than recognizable, and I'm not gonna say he's wrong, but let's be real. As the Fighters Passes continued releasing fighters, as well as the realization that most of them were from third-party companies, it really did become about the characters getting into Smash rather than how they played. Yes, the fighters should be fun to play, but with many of the new fighters in Ultimate being from third-party games and series that I've never played before, it's really tough for me to play a character that I don't have a connection or history with. It's the reason why many of the new big-name third-party characters didn't make the list. I bring this up because this is sort of the case with this fighter. Of the 3 big Microsoft-owned characters people wanted in Smash, Banjo and Kazooie were the ones I was rooting for the most, because I understood the demand for them, but it's strange. See, though I grew up with the N64, I didn't grow up with Banjo-Kazooie, and I wish I had played it back then. It's a game from back in the day that I really wanted to play, and one day I did manage to find a used copy of the original N64 version. I don't own an Xbox. I played it, and I wasn't that impressed the first time and couldn't get into it. But then Banjo and Kazooie were revealed for Ultimate, giving me a good reason to give the game another try. And I gotta say, I enjoyed it more the second time and got a better understanding of the character. In other words, a connection. And then Banjo and Kazooie were released, and let's just say I found their moveset to be kinda jank. Well, okay, to be fair, I have taken the time to sit down and get a better understanding of how they play. I still find their moveset a bit wonky, but I will say I find them more fun and enjoyable than I initially thought. What I really like about this fighter is the fact that they really don't have a gimmick. Ultimate really went rampant with fighter mechanics and gimmicks, so it's refreshing to see a more standard fighter in the mix. Yeah, people will bring up Wonder Wing, and yes, it is a very gimmicky move and a satisfying one to take stocks and win matches, but it's not their mechanic. They're just a traditional Smash Bros. Fighter with a moveset that reflects a lot of their moves from their game, almost like they were made to be like a Smash 64 fighter. Even if I don't find them as fun as I would have liked, I still consider them one of my favorite Ultimate newcomers. I really did enjoy what I got to experience playing Banjo and Kazooie, and their inclusion, just the fact that they're here, is something that I very much appreciate. I still need to go back and play the original game again on Switch, but for now, I'm very glad Banjo and Kazooie made it in. They really do feel right at home in Smash. This fighter should have been in the game sooner than later in my opinion. The idea of a fighter from ARMS was always a fascinating one to me. Sure, an ARMS fighter wasn't one of my personal most wanted fighters for the game, but I was very curious at the prospect of how one would play. No matter who they went with, the fighter was going to be unique, unlike anything we had seen before. Though, I'll admit, now that it's been a while, it is weird that the fighter isn't Springman. I understand and am perfectly fine with why they went with Min Min, but no matter how you look at it, Springman is the poster character, and not having the poster character of a series in Smash as a playable fighter, yet someone else from that series just feels weird to me.
But Kioski, you're just complaining. Min Min was chosen because the ARMS director wanted her in. Plus, she's the most popular character from ARMS.
All the more reason why both Springman and Min Min deserve to be in Smash. But enough about a hypothetical what could have been, because at the end of the day, Min Min is still frickin' sweet. She pretty much plays exactly how I pictured an ARMS fighter would play like. Long, stretchy arms to cover a huge area. Though this does mean that future ARMS fighters in Smash will play almost identically to this style. Thankfully, they did something for Min Min that'll help with making future ARMS fighters stand out. That being how they implemented the different types of equipable arms and the character's specific characteristics seen in ARMS. In Min Min's case, they gave us her signature arms. The Megawatt for those big, heavy, unexpected hits, the Dragon with those laser attacks, and my favorite of her arms, the Ram Ram, which covers a huge area and can be nasty for edge guarding. Though to make things simple, you can only switch the right arm's equipped arm. Of course, it's not all about the arms. Remember what I said about specific characteristics? Well, for Min Min in particular, she uses martial arts in some of her normal moves, like her jab, as well as her up smash flip kick that can reflect, just like in ARMS. She may not be one of my best characters, but she's definitely a very fun character. As one of the 2 games to miss Ultimate's base roster, this fighter well deserved her spot. She represents a newer game, and IP for that matter, and offers one of the most unique playstyles we've seen. Yeah, I love Min. As said before, the Smash Ultimate hype train was indeed a wild ride, but not everything on this ride was bound to please everyone. And you know what? It's okay if you were disappointed with some of the reveals. I'd be lying if I said I wasn't disappointed when this particular fighter got revealed. And yet... So, real talk. Did Byleth deserve to get a spot on the roster? Yes, Three Houses was a big release with high praise and is very popular. Did Byleth deserve to get in before an ARMS and Xenoblade Chronicles 2 fighter? Well, in my opinion, no, but that's an opinion that can be debated. But the fact remains, Byleth got into Smash. And you know what? They're actually pretty fun. It was clear that Byleth was going to be the one to represent Three Houses in Smash, since choosing one of the 3 house leaders from the game would make that one house leader appear more important than the other 2. It's like if they picked one of the 4 Breath of the Wild champions over the other 3 as a fighter. You can't just pick one, you have to have them all. And I think Byleth's moveset having the Hero's Relics was a good compromise with representing them in some capacity. Each of the 4 weapons corresponds to a directional input, so it's like you're getting a taste of each of the house leaders across the whole moveset. Arid Bar for those long reach attacks, Fail Not for juggling and a powerful projectile, and Amir for those heavy-hitting axe swings so satisfying. And of course, the Sword of the Creator, which sees the most use in the moveset since it's Byleth's signature weapon. It's all great stuff, but yeah, when you really boil it down, Byleth's moveset is very standard in regards to this implementation. There's not really a core gimmick, it's just each of their attacks uses a different weapon, something we've seen before in fighters like Inkling. But then again, having Byleth have 4 separate movesets for each weapon would have been taxing on what the devs could actually do in the game, not to mention confusing for the player to keep track of. so splitting the weapons up to different directional attacks was probably for the best. Byleth is basically a Swiss Army knife, with the tools needed for just about any situation. Just what I'd expect from the professor of Garreg Mach's Dual Academy of My Heroes Relics. Get your game on! Why were Echo Fighters so underutilized? They go and create an actual classification for clone characters, opening the door for a lot of highly requested characters to get a spot on this glorious roster, only for the concept to end so abruptly before it could be fully realized. Oh well, at least with the ones we got, I can appreciate them actually being here. So it may come as a shock to you guys when I say that only one of the new Echo Fighters actually made it on my list. I've said it before and I'll say it again. Chrom should have been in Smash 4. I understand why he wasn't, but as he became a more prominent mascot for the Fire Emblem series, and a much bigger mascot than Robin and Lucina could ever hope to be, yeah, there was no way around it. Chrom had to be in Smash somehow, and if that meant he had to be a clone in order to get in, so be it. And it's crazy, despite everyone's expectations of Chrom in Smash, he's not a clone of Ike, but rather Roy, which is good for me because I really loved Roy in Smash 4, so I got the hang of Chrom in no time. Though this did mean Roy was benched for me in Ultimate since Chrom was a character I both liked in Fire Emblem and wanted in Smash. In fact, in some ways, he surpassed Roy for me. Because Chrom wields Falchion, his sword's damage output is balanced unlike Roy's. In other words, a lot of Chrom's attacks will hit hard and fast. Though he did inherit Roy's bad offstage game, and is actually a lot worse than Roy's thanks to Chrom's up special being essentially Ike's up special. Guess he couldn't escape from being compared to Ike completely. That being said, I do like the attack. It does help him stand out from Roy, making him feel more unique as an Echo Fighter when compared to the others. It also fits Chrom very well, as it was repurposed to resemble an attack he does in a cutscene in Awakening. It's funny how I asked for a new Fire Emblem character in my 2017 list, and it ends up being Chrom, a character I wanted in Smash 4. You may have been a punching bag for not getting into Smash 4, but it's another day. He finally got his chance, and thanks to his big mascot status, I wouldn't be surprised if he appears in the next Smash. My first exposure to Sephiroth was in the Kingdom Hearts series. I'm very positive that's the case for a lot of people out there. Anyway, thanks to that and countdown videos from back in the day, I knew just how big of a deal Sephiroth was, making his unexpected reveal at the 2020 Game Awards that much more exciting. So how does he play? Well, remember when I said Ridley's concept for his playstyle was pure evil? Yeah, this is that cranked up to, I just killed the main bad guy of Ultimate. It's really crazy that we have a Smash Bros. Fighter with a sword with that much range with many of his attacks, especially with his forward smash, and up air. And I admit, I tend to spam those moves a lot when I use it, especially when the smash attacks get super armor when he's in his power boosting winged form, though the evil part of his moveset is in his specials. His down special is kind of your box standard counter. His side special can be used to pull off some intricate KOs if done correctly, and if the opponent doesn't shield, his up special is very awkward at times for recovery, but I love its Octo Slash variant for those unexpected attacks since you can aim it in any direction. And the standard special is an edge guarding terror of a move. You get your opponent off stage, they recover and they think they're safe.
No, but there will be a large explosion.
Oh yeah, Sephiroth's design and his playstyle does an excellent job at accentuating his status as a villain boss character. But he does have one weakness. He's a lightweight, and thus he can be launched very easily, something that became a bit of a trend with most of the DLC fighters that came after Sephiroth. But despite the high risk, the reward for playing him well is satisfying. Ultimate did a fantastic job at bringing in more villains, and this is one of the biggest villain inclusions in Smash ever. Not to mention his inclusion brought more Final Fantasy content, which was sorely lacking in the base game. Well done, Sephiroth. You've more than earned your place in Smash. But despite the massive hype he brought, he's not my favorite new villain fighter. That honor goes to... This guy is hilarious. Yeah, so like I said in my 2017 list, I've barely touched the DKC series. But like with Ridley, I knew of the character. Heck, some of his minions appeared in some Mario spin-offs like the Striker games, and K. Rool himself appeared in Mario Super Sluggers, all games I've played. But outside of these, most of my knowledge of King K. Rool was from his trophies in the Smash Bros. Games before Ultimate. And it was here where I asked myself, if this guy is the big bad of the Donkey Kong series, why has he never been in a Smash Bros. Game? And that's where Ultimate finally came in. If this game was really going for the big fan requests, then now was the time to bring him in. And they did. And he's awesome. Keep in mind, I don't like playing as heavyweights in Smash that much, but King K. Rool is a very special case. Yeah, most of his moves are pretty much what everyone was expecting, but they went above and beyond to make him a fun character. All of his attacks are goofy, silly, nonsensical, and they really shouldn't work, but they do, and they're great. Probably my favorite move is his back air. It's a very awkward spike move, but pulling it off is so satisfying. You see the footage playing on screen right now? I bursted into maniacal evil laughter because it was such a sick, twisted way of getting the finishing blow. And because he's a heavyweight, he can take a lot of punishment and still survive. And when you combine that with his armored belly and his fantastic moves, he's a force that's tough to take down. I haven't mentioned this yet, but it's funny how out of the 10 characters on my 2017 list, I got 5 of them. 5! How did I get so lucky? And K. Rool was one of them too. Ridley's reveal was spectacular, but King K. Rool was the Nintendo villain I was rooting for the most. And it was his reveal that no one saw coming in the August 8th, 2018 Smash Direct that helped make that Direct one of the best, even with the accidental Castlevania leak. We welcomed him aboard, now let's hope he stays aboard in the future. Now, if you've been following me on Twitter and or since I made my 2017 Most Wanted Fighters list that I keep bringing up, you know exactly which fighters remain on the list. Inkling, Pyra and Mithra, and Sora. I couldn't just do these entries separately like I normally do, saying, this one's number 3, this one's number 2, this one's number 1. No, I had to make an event out of it. I mean, these last 3 entries were fighters I really wanted in Ultimate, so for this final part of the list, I'll go over each fighter individually going in fighter numerical order, and then I'll have Ultimate's victory screen reveal the final results. So let's begin, starting with my most wanted fighter for a Smash on Switch, and the fighter most people were expecting, ended up being the very first fighter revealed, right before they revealed the actual game. That was a good day in March 2018. I'll admit, while Inkling was my most wanted fighter back then, I was worried that they would be too difficult to implement into Smash, to the point where they would scrap the idea and just make Inkling an assist trophy, which would have been a huge insult to Nintendo's biggest new IP in years. They really needed to be playable, but with the announcement of Ultimate in March 2018, and Inkling being formally revealed for the game, my fears were put to rest. All that was left was to see how they played, and they're everything I'd hoped they'd be, and then some. They use so many weapon types in their moveset, really giving us a full Splatoon representation with their inclusion. My favorite attacks are the Splat Bomb and Splat Roller. Throw a bomb and then lead the opponent to it, or throw it and then grab and throw them into it. So good! And burying the opponent in the ground with a roller, and then smacking them with an ink brush or popping them with a blaster? Yeah, they almost can't get out of it, and is usually my go-to strategy to claim stocks. But man, never would I thought of the mechanic of painting your opponent to make them more vulnerable to attacks. It's genius! I mean, that is the core of Splatoon, covering turf in your ink color. Though, I'll be honest, they can be a very tricky character to play at times. But I guess that's what happens when you're a tactical fighter. You really have to keep an eye on your ink tank and know when to refill, or else you're pretty much screwed. Fortunately, you have some attacks that don't require ink that can get the job done, like most of the aerials. I am bummed that Octoling wasn't made an Echo Fighter. Really would have loved seeing how they differentiated them from Inkling. But as a big Splatoon fan, what we got from Inkling was well worth it. Their reveal was the most hyped I've ever been for a Smash Fighter reveal in a long time at that point. Xenoblade Chronicles was the next Nintendo series in line after Metroid that really needed another rep. Having just Shulk wasn't enough anymore. There's more to Xenoblade Chronicles than just the first game now, as it's a series that has grown so much in the last decade. And a fighter from Xenoblade Chronicles 2 was such an obvious choice for a new Xenoblade rep in Ultimate. I didn't want to give up hope, even with the Rex Meat Fighter costume. Though it is the Rex costume that had me looking elsewhere for fighter choices for Xenoblade Chronicles 2, namely Pyra and Mithra by themselves. If you've been following me on Twitter for the longest time, you've seen me advocate for this idea. And in the end, pretty much everything I predicted for Pyra and Mithra Mythra as a fighter came true. It's like Zelda and Sheik of old, but here it makes so much more sense. And they did end up being essentially echo fighters of each other with different properties. But I will say I didn't see their specials being their actual specials from Xenoblade Chronicles 2 coming, but it works so well, and combine that with their property differences, they really do feel like distinct fighters from each other. Now yes, their normal attacks were pretty much made up, but I don't care. I really like what they did for those moves, and since they both share those moves, there's not a whole lot to keep track of, unlike with Zelda and Sheik. It's only the specials you have to keep track of, and it's pretty easy. If I had to pick my favorite of the two, definitely Pyra. Sure, Mythra is good at racking up damage thanks to her speed, and I love that about her, but she is yet another lightweight. If she is high on damage, one hit is all it takes to take Mythra down. Pyra, on the other hand, well, for starters, I just like Pyra as a character more than Mythra. And second, I just like her moves more, and her being a heavyweight...
What did you say?
Hey, don't look at me, I'm just stating the facts here. Now, where was I? Oh yes, heavyweight. Pyra can really take hits and live. When I played her for the first time, I was shocked at how much punishment she could take and still survive. But in the end, you really need to play them both in tandem to get the best out of them. The weaknesses of one is covered by the other's strengths. We may not have gotten Rex, but the Aegis, the fixture of Xenoblade Chronicles 2's lore, was the next best choice they could have gone with. You two earned that slot. The miracle reveal, the impossibility that no one thought could be realized unless you were insane, and I was. I've said it before, Ultimate was the game that gave us the big fan requests. And Sora was the biggest fan request of them all thanks in part to the Smash Bros. Fighter ballot's true final results being revealed at last. I was curious to see how Sora was going to be implemented if he got in, but let's face it, there was a number of ways they could have gone with his moveset, and I always thought that, if he got in, they'd use his Kingdom Hearts 3 design with the Kingdom Hearts 2 outfit as an alt. But they ultimately went with the more simple approach and based him on the first Kingdom Hearts game, right down to his look. I was surprised they went with that design, but it is the most recognizable, and thankfully, they didn't forget his other outfits. Easily the best alts in the game. But what about that simple and clean approach to his moveset? Really, all they did was take moves from his game that would work for this game and slapped it onto a moveset. There really isn't anything here that's too gimmicky like most other fighters in the game. Heck, magic is his only real gimmicky attack. Of course, that's not to say he's not unique. Like with most new fighters, they made him feel like he was ripped straight out of his game. This is best shown with his normal attacks being mostly variations of his basic 3-hit combo with the Keyblade, but his true strengths lie in aerial combat. He's very floaty, which, for a game like Kingdom Hearts where aerial combat is pretty much everything in its gameplay, it really had to be this way. But having aerial sweep and sonic blade, and having the latter be performed right after the former, pretty much makes Sora's aerial game, well, king. One last thing, I knew that if Sora got in, he'd use the Kingdom Key, since it's his signature Keyblade. And I knew they wouldn't change the keychain. It's such a fixture to the Kingdom Key's design that changing it would be just straight up wrong. Sure, they could have just given him a different Keyblade, but again, signature Keyblade. All I have left to say is, Disney, thank you for allowing a beloved and highly requested video game character participate in the greatest video game crossover of this era. So those are my thoughts on the fighters, but what's the final verdict? Well, there's no point in delaying, so without further ado...
This is the power of the Aegis!
Yep, the Aegis claims top honors, but are you really surprised? Especially to the Twitter followers who have seen me talk about their inclusion in Smash constantly? In terms of gameplay, I like them all, but Pyra and Mythra's playstyle is the one I enjoy the most. I love how their attacks work, and their swapping mechanic and their specials are the icing on the cake. It really does feel like I'm playing as the legendary Blades of Allrest here, but what really cements them at the top for me is just the fact that they did make it into Smash. Remember, these three were fighters I wanted in the game since 2017. Inkling may have been my most wanted fighter at the time, but since they were the very first fighter revealed for the game, it proved they had no issue whatsoever getting into Smash. Their inclusion was practically a given. Sora was definitely a long shot to get a spot on the roster, and yeah, he ultimately got into Smash by sheer chance, but he was the true winner of the Smash Bros. Fighter ballot from all the way back in 2015, so he did have that going for him, and it was clearly the deciding factor for his inclusion in Smash. But getting a fighter from a game that got constantly told, it's too late, it missed its chance, it's no longer relevant. They added the Rex Mii fighter costume, so they can't add a fighter from this game anymore. Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition is what's relevant, so just go with a fighter from that game. Yeah, it really did start to feel like a pipe dream. After the reveal of the Rex Mii Fighter costume and the first Fighter's Pass ending on Byleth, a character from a very recent, very relevant Nintendo game at the time, it really did feel like a lack of relevancy was the reason why Xenoblade Chronicles 2 wasn't going to get a fighter in the game. But it absolutely deserved to have one in Smash, whether it was Rex and Pyra, or Pyra and Mythra by themselves. So when it was said that ARMS was getting a fighter in Smash, that gave me hope. And my hope was realized. That reveal was the most hyped I have ever been for a fighter reveal ever, even more so than Sora. It was the reveal of a fighter from a series that desperately needed it, and it happened to be the fighter I really wanted. And they're characters that I like in general, I might add. And when you combine them with the fact that I love how they play, yeah, there was no ifs, ands, or buts. They were going to be my favorite newcomer in Ultimate. Welcome to the roster, ladies. I'll say it again, you've more than earned that spot on this roster. I'm Chaos Key, and I'd be lying if I said I wasn't curious about where Smash Bros. Goes from here. It's not a matter of if, because Smash has become such an iconic series, and there will be more characters that get introduced in the future that I'm sure people will want to see get their time in the Smash spotlight. It's definitely not going to be as huge as Ultimate, and it's possible Sakurai won't be involved, but that just means we can think of the possibilities Nintendo can go for. But until that day comes, I'm satisfied with what we have here. Mr. Sakurai, thank you.